It is Friday, May 15th, 2026, and this is the High Road Logistics and Leadership. I'm Jules Sterling, and I'm the one who makes sure these trucks and these personalities actually get where they're going.
This is Elena Rossi.
I'm Dan Miller.
And I'm Buck Reynolds. We have a great show for you today.
Oh, it is a big show today, folks. Happy Friday! Yesterday we were wading through the weeds of the Highway Trust Fund and that $550 billion reauthorization bill, not to mention FedEx officially greenlighting the FDXF spinoff.
The lean, mean LTL machine.
Exactly. Well, today we are starting with something that, honestly, it's going to change the legal landscape of brokerage forever. We're talking about the Supreme Court.
Change is an understatement, Jules. Yesterday, May 14th, the U.S. Supreme Court basically set the $900 billion logistics industry on fire. In a unanimous 9-0 decision, Montgomery v. Carribe Transport, they ruled that freight brokers are no longer shielded by federal law from state-level negligent hiring lawsuits.
9-0? That's not a split, that's a shutout.
Good. About time. Here's the deal. If C.H. Robinson or any of these big players are hiring a carrier like Carribe, who, by the way, had a conditional rating and a history of hours of service violations, they should be on the hook when someone gets hurt.
Well, right. But Buck, think about the ripple effect. If you're a mid-sized broker, how do you verify every single one of those 100,000 carriers in your network to a Supreme Court-proof standard? It feels like it's going to squeeze the smaller guys out.
You're right, Jules. Actually, the big 3PLs with deep pockets for vetting software might survive this. But for the rest, insurance premiums are going to skyrocket by Monday morning. If you aren't checking every driver's qualification file and every FMCSA safety report like it's a crime scene, you are a walking target for a nuclear verdict.
Look, bottom line, this is a capacity killer. Brokers are going to get so picky about who they hire that a huge chunk of owner-operators, even the ones with decent records, might find themselves blacklisted because their paperwork isn't perfect.
Wait, Dan, you're saying a guy with a minor paperwork glitch becomes a liability risk?
Exactly. If I'm a broker and I see a conditional rating or a few too many breakout of adjustment tickets, I'm not touching that truck. I can't afford a 9-0 SCOTUS decision sitting on my desk. Rates are going up because the safe capacity just got a lot smaller.
Well, while the lawyers are fighting it out, the robots are actually starting their shifts. We've moved past the pilot phase, folks. We're into high-scale execution. FedEx and ServiceNow just announced at Knowledge 2026 in Vegas that they're basically merging the digital and the physical.
Wait, Agentic AI, Jules?
Yes. It's not just a dashboard anymore, It's Agentic AI, autonomous software that doesn't just tell you there's a delay, it executes the fix. They're using 2 petabytes of FedEx network data to trigger automatic workflows when a shipment gets stuck.
Hold on, 2 petabytes? That's what, the entire Library of Congress every 5 minutes?
Sort of. Right? It's massive. And it's not just software. Figure AI, those humanoid robots, are now working 8-hour shifts autonomously in warehouses. They aren't just standing there. They're hitting human-level performance.
Human-level performance? Can they smell a failing wheel bearing? Can they tell when a pallet is leaning just by the sound it makes when the forklift hits a bump? The thing is, you can't code for intuition.
Well, maybe not yet, Buck. But when they can work 24 hours a day without a union break or a bad back, managers are looking at that $706 billion returns dilemma and thinking robots are the only way to survive the autonomous enterprise shift.
My concern is the risk portfolio. If a robot drops a crate on a human worker because the Agentic AI had a software glitch, who is liable? The software dev or the warehouse manager? We're replacing human error with systemic failure.
Look, here's the play. The tech is ahead of the training. I've said it before. It's like having an all-pro quarterback and a high school offensive line. If the people on the floor don't know how to coach the AI, it's just expensive junk.
Amen to that, Dan.
Hey, before we move on to the chaos in California, a quick note from our sponsor. Strategic logistics requires world-class engineering, and this show is powered by the stack developed by Eric Christensen at Neural Network Media. Support the architect behind the code that keeps us on the air. Visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Neural Network Media for a free trial and access to our daily briefing PDF. Check it out.
All right, let's talk about the billion-dollar spark. California Governor Gavin Newsom just opened enrollment for the California Clean Fuel Reward. We're talking $1 billion in point-of-sale rebates for electric trucks.
Huh. $1 billion? Of whose money?
Exactly. That's the point. They want to make zero-emission trucks the better choice today, not in 5 years. Southern California Edison is running the show. If you're a drayage carrier in Long Beach, you're basically getting a subsidized fleet.
I suppose, but what about the infrastructure? Actually, my thing is the charging reliability. If these fleets take the money and then their trucks are sitting idle because the grid can't handle 500 Class 8s charging at once, the reward becomes a regression.
And don't get me started on the weight. Those batteries take up half your payload. You're getting a free truck to haul half as much freight. I mean, it doesn't compute for a long-haul guy.
Well, Buck, look. The play here is regional. Short-haul, drayage, box trucks. That's where the $1 billion is going. It's a market shock, plain and simple.
Now it's time for The Big Board, our Friday segment where we break down the high-stakes moves and the money behind the movement.
And this Friday, Jules, the big board is looking a lot like a global chessboard. Let's start with Q-Nagel. They are doubling down on the book and claim model for biofuels.
I mean, I love the name, but sort of, how does it actually work for a shipper?
It's smart. K+N pays Hapag-Lloyd to burn green biofuel on their ships, right? But the shipper who pays for the green credit doesn't necessarily have their specific box on the green ship. They just claim the carbon reduction for their Scope 3 reporting.
Right. So it's like buying green energy for your house. You're supporting the supply, even if the actual electrons aren't yours.
Isn't that just expensive PR? Actually, if the verified carbon reductions are being traded like offsets, we need to be very careful about double counting.
Well, K+N is betting big on it. Their road logistics segment, which includes the IMC integration we talked about last year, is their bright spot. EBIT was up 32% year over year. They are weaving 3,000 IMC drivers into their global TMS via API.
And we have to talk about the board of directors at UPS. I mean, talk about a pivot. Kevin Warsh, who was a director there, just got confirmed as the chairman of the Federal Reserve.
That is a massive macro move. You see, having a guy who sat on the UPS board now running the Fed, that tells you how critical logistics data is to national monetary policy. UPS is already cutting $9 billion in costs, closing 23 buildings to lean into AI.
Lean performance. That's just a fancy way of saying fewer people doing more work.
It's working for the shareholders, Buck. UPS beat earnings even though volume was down. They're dumping low-margin Amazon packages and focusing on high-value healthcare and small biz.
I mean, right? And C.H. Robinson is doing the same thing. They just had their shareholder meeting and the mandate was clear: lean AI. They want to be an asset-light powerhouse without the bloat.
Bottom line, the big board says if you aren't specialized, you're dead. Look at K+N's new deal with MCH Group, managing logistics for 150 high-stakes events like Art Basel. You can't do that with a generalist model. You need a moat.
The big board? That's a wrap for this week.
Look, let's pivot to the market recovery because I am telling you, the supply side squeeze is here. J.B. Hunt is calling for a 20% increase in truckload rates over the next 2 years. Here's the play, Alina. We've lost 88,000 carrier authorities in the last 2 years. The slack is gone. The outbound tender rejection index is at 13%. That's double what it was last year.
It's the purge, Dan. I mean, the thing is, you can only run at a loss for so long before the bank takes the keys. And now with these diesel prices?
Exactly. We have a perfect storm. Fuel inflation is back because of the Middle East, and the Supreme Court just made brokerage more expensive. Carriers finally have the leverage again. The Cass line haul index jumped 5.6% in April alone.
Actually, that's going to hit retail hard. If freight costs jump 20%, you're going to see it at the grocery store by August.
Well, I mean, the demand is there. E-commerce is up 11%. People are still clicking buy, even if they're complaining about the prices. It's a supply-driven bull market.
And it's a global mess, too. The Strait of Hormuz is basically non-operational. Over 150 tankers are just sitting there, waiting for the shooting to stop.
It's a dual corridor blockade, Buck. The Red Sea is restricted, and now Hormuz is closed. Hapag-Lloyd just swung to a loss because of it. Doesn't matter how big you are when you can't move your ships. Qatar Energy declared force majeure on LNG. Europe is going to have a very cold, very expensive winter if this doesn't clear up. Empty containers are piling up in the Persian Gulf, and they can't get back to Asia.
That's the equipment crunch we were worried about. If those boxes don't get back to China, we're going to have a repeat of the 2021 port backlog. But this time, it's because of bombs, not just backlogs.
It really makes you realize why that Tenet and Crown Data Systems merger is so smart. They're building an AI-powered super platform to solve that fragmented data problem in air freight and cartage.
It's the contrast that kills me. You see Tenet consolidating, and then you look at First Brands Group, a $14 billion company collapsing into Chapter 7 liquidation.
Whoa, $14 billion? That's not a bankruptcy, that's a crater.
It's a cautionary tale about opaque debt and operational bloat. They didn't have real-time visibility. By the time they realized they were sinking, the water was over their heads.
No single pane of glass there, I reckon. I mean, you can't manage what you can't see.
All right, we have to talk about the main story of the week. And frankly, it is the most alarming data I've seen in years. The 2026 International Road Check concluded yesterday.
Oh, the blitz. My CB radio was glowing red for 72 hours.
Buck, the early data from the FMCSA is a compliance shock. The vehicle out-of-service rate on day 1 was 31.4%. By day 2, it hit 32.3%.
Wait, what? 32%? I mean, so basically 1 out of every 3 trucks on the road yesterday was pulled over and told they couldn't move?
Exactly. The historical benchmark is about 18%. We've nearly doubled it. Over 2,000 vehicles were grounded in just the first 48 hours.
What was the primary cause? Was it brakes again?
Actually, the focus was driver integrity and ELD tampering. Inspectors were hunting for ghost logs. They aren't just looking at the equipment anymore, they're looking for software fraud. If an inspector finds out you're running ghost hours, the fines are hitting $16,000 for willful violations.
Here's the deal. Drivers are desperate. Rates have been low, fuel is high, and they're trying to squeeze every mile they can just to break even. I don't condone the ghost logs, but, I mean, when the government makes it impossible to make a living, people start cutting corners.
My thing is, Buck, it's not just a paperwork glitch anymore. We're seeing a 1,500% rise in strategic theft and fraud since 2022. The ghost logs are often used by the same crews doing the cargo theft. The DOJ is calling it a war on fraud, and this road check was the first major battle.
I mean, it's terrifying. If I'm an account manager and 1/3 of my fleet is grounded, how do I explain that to a VP of supply chain? Sorry, your shipment is late because my carrier was using a digital mask?
Your freight is in the penalty box, sir.
It's a lack of fundamentals. These new training schools. I mean, did you see that report out of Ontario? They were issuing licenses to guys who hadn't even learned how to back up a trailer. Ghost hours in training lead to ghost hours on the road.
Well, the net is tightening. Between the Supreme Court decision we opened with and these road check numbers, the Wild West era of trucking is being forcibly shut down. If you aren't compliant, you aren't in business. Period.
I mean, sort of a heavy note to end the week on, right? But I guess it's the reality check we all need.
It's the precursor to catastrophe, Jules. Better to get pulled over by an inspector than to have a 9-0 SCOTUS ruling against you because of a negligent hire.
True that, Elena.
That's all for today's High Road, Logistics, and Leadership. We've covered a landmark SCOTUS ruling that changes the broker shield forever, a massive compliance shock with a 32% out-of-service rate at the road check, and a supply-side squeeze that might just push your rates up by 20%. It's a high-stakes game out there.
Keep your paperwork tight.
Watch the big board.
Keep the shiny side up.
And maybe drink some green juice this weekend. We're gonna need the energy for Monday.